Yes, with
Cool.
my daughter and her
Good.
husband.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 13th regular council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Start with the land acknowledgement. The Blackfalds Town Council acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Administration, any changes or additions to the agenda this evening?
No changes or additions, Your Worship.
Council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt this evening's agenda? Councilor Dennis. All in favor? That is unanimous, thank you. We do have a delegation this evening. We're joined by Nick Wilson and David Skier from a Global Traffic Group Limited. Welcome, gentlemen.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come and present this evening. And I met a few of you, I think in Calgary at the AUMA conference, and chatted about automated traffic enforcement, and we're interested in looking at that and answering, I guess, 20 questions around that, and starting with the presentation. So thank you. And yes, joined with Nick. I know he's been chatting with the administration a little bit back and forth about all the logistics with Blackfalds and giving some information and some data. So we'll see some of that in the presentation this evening. And yeah, my name is David Steer. I'm the CEO of Global Traffic Group. And a little bit of history. So Global, we started about 20 years ago. And prior to that, in Alberta, you would have seen photo radar in the cities like Edmonton and Calgary. And I know back in the 88 Olympics in Calgary, they had photo enforcement in Calgary. And about 20 years ago, that's when the Sol Jen had the foresight. She changed the legislation to allow smaller communities that had a municipal policing contract in place. And that would have been any communities with a population over 2,500. That has since changed to a population of over 5,000. And so here we are with Blackfalds meeting that threshold criteria. You're over 5,000, you have a municipal policing contract in place. You're allowed to utilize automated traffic enforcement. And then there's something else we'll talk about a little bit later in terms of, just the freeze that's currently in place with automated traffic enforcement in Alberta. So a number of people would ask me, how did I get into this and what's my role and how does that work? So we were just talking in the back about some flying. So my history with this is one of my passions is flying airplanes. So as a young man, wanted to learn how to fly airplanes, and I got into that, started my own company. And I was the guy driving the airplane with the RCMP officers in the back running up and down the highways, and they would be, the RCMP officers had their stopwatches and they'd be catching speeders, and I was the one driving the airplane all over northern Alberta. So, and then with the legislative change, got into automated traffic enforcement, and here we are today. So we've been doing that really across Alberta and into Saskatchewan, and now moving out into Ontario with that. And a number of people will ask, well, can you explain to me how it happens from, the vehicle on the side of the road or the red light camera at an intersection, through the different phases of, issuing a ticket and what happens to the information and privacy and courts and traffic safety and all of the data and the Sol Gen reports. And, then there's also that, the little knock-on effect that maybe there's some revenue, and how does that happen with communities and going into traffic safety programs or community programs. So here's essentially a flow chart, and I won't give you a guided reading lesson, and I understand we're under the clock here a little bit, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But other than to say that in Alberta, it's not just a question of you can say, okay, well, your administration is directing a contractor or a peace officer to go out there and just operate wherever they want. These are actually zones. And over the last 20 years, the province has significantly changed the guidelines around those zones where you're required. So either it's going to be a school zone, a playground zone, multi-lane artery, et cetera, construction zone. But it's not just something that you set up overnight and then you go operate tomorrow. There's a lot of forethought that goes into that, and I'll say even data and some science that goes into it now as well. So the last thing that we want to do is actually issue a ticket to somebody. And the first thing you want to do is see if there's an educational component or an engineering component that you can change or educate people so they can slow down. So making sure that it's properly signed, running a warning program months in advance. And then unfortunately, some people, whether they're on their cell phone or in a rush, or they're just, not wanting to abide by the laws of the land, they're going to be speeding by. And then at the end of the day, there's a reminder in the mail to help them the next time they go through that zone. And we've proven over the 20 years that in terms of an efficiency of technology and human resources, it's an extremely effective tool to get that compliance that you're looking for. And contrary to maybe public belief that this is just cost of doing business, and some people, if they have their own company, they just do it over and over again and give that invoice to the accountant and get paid, and they continue on with that behavior. The data just doesn't support that. It's extremely effective, and in fact, it is those commercial vehicles and especially the heavy truck traffic that are the first to comply. It's not only the vehicle on the side of the road or a box on the side of the road that's beaming information to a peace officer live, but there's also the fixed red light cameras that are a solution. And I won't go into too much of the details other than to say that the systems that we use are very different than what you'd see in Edmonton or Calgary. These are a loopless system where it's vision based, so we're not putting a cable into the road, into your brand new asphalt. It's going to go through these crazy freeze thaw cycles in Alberta, and for 6 months of the year not work, and then away you go. So these are really a vision-based system, and we did pioneer that in Alberta and got it approved through the court system in Alberta. A knock-on effect of that is that we're able to do amber alerts, so the vehicle doesn't have to be speeding. So if there is an amber alert, we can load it up on our iPhone within seconds and start looking for a plate, and we would get a hit that this vehicle just transited this intersection 30 seconds ago at whatever location. And also blacklist if there's something bad going on with the police and they're looking for a specific vehicle, we can load them up with a license plate, and that vehicle doesn't need to be going through a red light or speeding through. It does do automated number plate reading, and so we'd be able to pick that up as well. So again, just in the interest of time, we have a number of different solutions, and over the 20 years, we have our own in-house programmers, designers, machine learning folks. So all of these solutions, they're Alberta-based solutions for our Alberta-based plates, and we do that here in Alberta, and they're extremely effective. I guess just looking at this, one of the things that maybe a lot of people don't know, that they think, oh, well, I can drive by this vehicle parked on the side of the road, and 100 meters later, I can ramp up to Mach, aviation reference, so back up to speed. And in fact, it's not the case. Some of our systems go up to 400 meters. So we're using these big lenses that you would see at a football game or something like that. So we can pull in a plate that's doing 200 kilometers an hour at 400 meters away. And, so again, the whole point of it is compliance, not that we're trying to catch people. We're trying to just remind them next time it's there to keep us all safe. We do have our own processing center, so what happens every evening, all of the systems in all of our contract communities, all of those violations are sent to our processing center. All of the license plates are manually entered, so it's not just a robotic or automated process where there's some computers doing it. Every step of the process, I guess just to say that the due diligence is there on each and every violation, and everything is looked at, I'll say probably 20 times before it goes out in the mail, just to make sure that every, our error rate is 0.0004%. And so it would take two people to have dyslexia of the exact same thing in the exact same dyslexic way. So if I'm entering ABC 123 and you're entering ABC 123 separately on a separate session, it would have to be that, no, it was actually ACB 123 and we both made the same error. So it does happen, but it's extremely rare. So the first step in a process is typically finding out and getting that data to, as I said, bringing some science to it. So a lot of people will say we have a speeding problem in front of my house or my business or what have you. And when we go out there and put together something like this, a heat map. And what we're looking at here is on the top of this chart from Sunday to Saturday, and along the vertical axis, we have the 24 hours in the day. So the blue would show that there's nobody speeding at all. Yellow is more, there's some people speeding, but it's a volume of people that are speeding that is manageable by police or peace officers, etc. And where it's red, there's so many people, it's too high of a volume for police to handle. And in some situations, it's probably unsafe if it's a curved road or something like that, or a narrow road where there's no spot to pull people over safely, where it's actually a risk for the peace officer or police officer to be out there trying to enforce that. So then what we do is we put that into a mosaic for the community. So at a glance, you can see all of these zones. On the bottom would be where, if Jane Doe or John Doe are saying you need to come and, have your peace officers in front of my house, you can say, well, actually there's no issues there. And up on the top left corner, you can see that there's a significant issue. And when we go year over year, then we can see that this is the exact same zones in the exact same community. So where there was a major speeding issue and sort of some mid-level stuff in the middle, you can see that 4 years later, it's changed dramatically. And we do have some communities that have said, well, we went out there and we paid a bunch of money to, I'll say the RCMP or contracting, and we're going to use manned enforcement. We're going to turn on the lights, we're going to pull people over, and we're going to make a change. And we have stats that show that, yeah, you spend a lot of money and you don't get the effect that you want for 20 different reasons. And we can go into that another time if you like. But we do a contract in Slave Lake, and they've said that we can share this information with you. So here, what we do, like I said, we don't want to try and hide anything from anybody. The best solution is to have people on board and understand the program so that they comply and they don't speed and keep your community safer. So each one of these zones, if it's blue, that means on the previous heat map that I just showed you, there's not even one red square on there. If it's red, it means that there's at least one. So this would be loaded up on the town's website, and so the public can go on there. They can look at the photo enforcement program, and they can drill down as much as they want, their heart's content, into this stuff, and they can click on each one of those pins. The zone, the location, the address will pop up. They can further click on that, and they can see the police officer that signed off on that zone has a justification sheet as to why we're enforcing there. But is it a school? Is it a high multi-lane high-speed artery or something else? They can see the heat maps from year over year and see that no, in fact, it has gone from this color to that color. And then I know Nick has put together this. I think your administration sent up to us. So just some of the things that we had heard in terms of some of the areas of concern. So to dive into it a little bit further, some of the things that we had heard was that you can't enforce on provincial highways in Alberta, and that's not quite accurate. Of course, if it's within the corporate limits of the community, that roadway, even though it's a provincial highway, and maybe they still have full responsibility for it. And I understand that changes in cities, and we do operate in cities like Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray, St. Albert. So if you have Highway 2 going through St. Albert, then of course we're on Highway 2, but that is the city-owned property as soon as it switches over to a city. But as a town designation, if it's within the corporate limits, and maybe the province handles snow removal, etc., but the enforcement function is still a town function, and it's under that auspice that we do photo enforce in Edson and Hinton and Devon and all these other places on the provincial highways, of Highway 2 and Highway 16 and Highway 60 and etc. all across the province. So we do enforce, but only within the corporate limits of the community. We were supplied some statistics, and I think that this is a little bit different. And as I was talking to your peace officer here tonight, in terms of the heat maps that I showed you before, those were based on the trigger speeds that the police would have used, that if somebody was speeding by them in a school zone, they would have turned their lights on and pulled that person over and given them a ticket. I think everybody knows that nobody's getting a ticket for doing 1 or 2 over the speed limit. And of course, there's some, thresholds there with even the equipment, whether you're using a LiDAR or a radar. So in terms of your speed reader board, this might be at the level that's just over the speed limit. So in this one, it's saying it's 40, so maybe this is just over that. What we do to show a true picture of, do you have an issue with speeding on those heat maps that I was showing you, that's at or above the trigger speed. So that's at a speed. So it's a true indicator. It's not showing you the people that are doing 41 or 42 in the 40 zone. It's like, nope. Do we have an issue with people speeding? And if it's yellow or red, yes, you do. Then these are above that trigger speed. So there's just a few of the zones that you've had your speed reader boards out in Blackfalds. So in terms of next steps, as I said, there's this freeze, not just cold weather, but pardon the pun. There is a provincial freeze on automated traffic enforcement in Alberta, and that's been put in place for a couple of years while they evaluate, and it seems that we're always evaluated. Every community, there's a provincial evaluation that goes on to each program every 2 years, and it's been that way for the last 10 years. But there's a provincial evaluation, and that's fair enough, and they're looking at it for a bunch of different reasons. So that being said, we were all told that the freeze was going to be coming off on December 1st, but just a week ago, after December 1st, in fact, we were told that that freeze was going to be on for another year. So when I spoke with some of you at the conference a couple of months ago, yes, December 1st, freeze comes off. You could do some of these steps this winter, and next spring you can start your program if that's the direction that Mayor and Council want to go. Times have changed, and so here's the reality today that what can you do? So if you wanted to move forward with this, some things you could do would be looking at signing an agreement, going out to RFP or what have you, putting a contract in place, getting some of this data now, because if you waited until next December and freeze comes off, you would have to gather a bunch of data. Like I said, you're not just going out there and starting on day one. The process to ramp up and start would take probably a minimum of 6 months. So get your data, start your mornings, put the signs up in the community, be in the newspaper, let everybody know that this is coming, and then work together with the community and your policing agencies, peace officers and police officers, and figure out where are those zones, areas of concern, areas where there's collisions, etc., and then start getting that benchmark data and then look at the strategies moving forward. So it might be a perfect time, if that is Mayor and Council's wishes, to look at this in 23, get some of that stuff starting to happen in the spring, and then moving forward with your operational program starting in 24. So with that, just at 15 minutes, so I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor. And if there's any questions or comments, happy to answer those.
Thank you. Open it up for questions, anyone in council? I guess one question that comes to mind, the fact that as you indicated, every 2 years is reviewed. Does that freeze the program? So this is unique in the province right now, where they've frozen does that does that restrict the use of the cameras for things like the Amber Alerts and the blacklist functions, or?
So two separate things there. For the last 10 years, every 2 years, there is an audit or an evaluation of the program. So the Solicitor General's Department puts together an evaluation team, so a professional team of people who have a lot of enforcement experience, and they go in with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that the programs are operating as they should be, and that there's nothing untoward, or just that we're making sure that this program that seems to be political sometimes is ticking all the boxes. So that's one part of it, to make sure that we're all on the same page. What I'm talking about, the second part, this ATE freeze, what they've done at the provincial level, and I'll say politically, is just done this really probably 30,000 foot evaluation of the program, and trying to answer all the questions that they might have at that level. And during this freeze, what they're saying is there will be no new programs. So that being said, if Blackfalds decided tonight to vote and we're going to start a program, you can't until this freeze, this provincial ATE freeze, is lifted. So there are some things that you can do in the interim. To answer your question about Amber Alerts and stuff like that, we can do that in our communities right now, and we're not that part of the program. So we're still operating today in all of our communities. We're still able to, issue tickets for people blowing stop signs, red lights, and speeding. What we cannot do is start a new zone. So if there's a new subdivision that opens up, we're not allowed to start a new zone there. We're not allowed to buy any new technology, something fancy and new comes out of Germany or Italy or somewhere, or we design our own new system, which we have. We're not allowed to use it in Alberta until after the freeze. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does a little bit. I guess second to that would, be some questions as to whether or not, or how much time and effort that we potentially invest in this process if we don't know whether or not the province is going to continue to allow this to move forward. So obviously these are questions that we
Yeah, I would say, so just a quick answer to that would be that I used to sit on that side of the table a bunch of years ago, so I was an elected official as well. And when I started this program, we thought, you are not taking money away from the library to start this program. That would be crazy. So it is based on a ticket. So we would do all of this just with contract in place, and there's no cost to the community. It's based off of a ticket that we issue, we get paid. So all of that happens as part of the program setup, and there's no real cost to the community. And I would say if you have a traffic safety issue, even putting signs up that you're going to start this program or do the traffic counts, etc., is going to have a percentage. What that percentage is, I don't know, but it's going to have some percentage that people will start to slow down. And so it is a little bit of an investment in terms of, and when I say a little bit, I mean very little. We do a lot of the legwork on this, and just an administrative contact signing a form or two and giving us that direction. But it would be, if this is not a full-time administrative oversight role, this would be an hour or two a week kind of a thing, to make sure that you have this preloaded, and if it happens in a year from now, great. If it doesn't, you've had some effect, and you have a lot of great data at no cost.
Okay.
I was going to ask what the cost was.
Okay. Well, and I think that some of those answers were given to us when we went to the trade show, that the idea is when the enforcement happens, that's done at your cost, and we have a share in that. I wasn't sure. I don't think we were entirely sure whether there was costs incurred in the study portion, and so thank you for answering that. Anyone else with questions? Okay, wonderful. So we did talk earlier. This is something that our council and administration will take as information and discuss. And as you've said, that there's no reason for this to be dealt with urgently, because we're waiting for the province to make a decision in the next year. So thank you so much.
Yep, sincere thank you to all of you for having us come and present. Have a great night.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good night. Okay, we have no public hearing this evening. We have no business arising from the minutes. Our first item of business is 7.1, appointment of a member at large for EDTAC.
Thank you, Worship. The EDTAC currently has a vacancy for a member from the public at large. And as council is aware, the committee currently has 7 citizen appointments and 2 council member appointments. The terms of reference state that the committee is to be comprised of a minimum of 8 members from the public at large, in addition to the 2 council members. So to ensure that the EDTAC membership requirements are fulfilled, Economic Development Officer Baranek worked with the volunteer programmer to review current inventory of available volunteers to sit on multiple boards and committees, and as a result, and in consultation with administration, Cliff Soper was approached and has expressed interest in filling the vacancy. If the council appointment is made, if this appointment will meet the committee's minimum membership requirements as outlined in the terms of reference, which is attached to the request for decision. Administration is recommending that council move to appoint Cliff Soper as a member at large on the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee for a 2-year term, effective immediately and ending December 13th, 2024.
Thank you. Any questions for CEO Thompson before we entertain a motion? Seeing none, someone would like to make a recommendation? Councilor Stenby.
Since you read it so eloquently, I won't, but I'll move the administrative recommendation.
Thank you. Any debate or discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. 7.2, cancellation of the standing committee of council.
Last previous years, about this time, administration has come to council requesting cancellation of the December standing committee, mainly because it falls very close to Christmas and there isn't a lot of information that's pressing that's required to be brought forward prior to year end. This also allows council or administration to more time to focus on year end requirements such as the audit, year end grant reporting, capital assets, and those types of things that are required by year end. So administration is respectively requesting the council move to cancel the December 19th standing committee of council.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, we do have administrative recommendation. Councillor Sands.
I'll move the council moves to cancel the December 19th, 2022 Standing Committee of Council meeting.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship.
Item 7.3, council remuneration and compensation policy 156-21. Annex A.
Your Worship, this policy outlines the remuneration provided to mayor and council through honorariums, per diem rates, expenses, and benefits. The last update of the policy was approved by council on November 9th of 2021, following the council remuneration and compensation review undertaken through consulting services and formally accepted by council on August 10th of last year. From time to time and over the current and previous council terms, there have been situations where there's some ambiguity arising relating specifically to what constitutes payments relative to honorariums and per diems. Administration was requested to review the current council remuneration and compensation policy and provide updates to the policy that would increase clarity. The only section of the amendments was to Appendix A, which was expanded and provided more detailed descriptions of qualifying inclusions. During recent discussions, there was also some uncertainties about municipal boards, committees and commissions versus external boards. Committees and for clarity, two attachments have been added, including a table listing the external boards, committees and commissions, and an information sheet on external boards and committees and commissions. Under financial implications, there are funds available for attendance and support for council members fulfilling their expectations and obligations within the legislative cost center. So the policy that was attached, we provided one markup version that shows the changes to Appendix A, and then also a clean copy as well. So in Section 2, there is just some cleanup of wording in 2.1. In 2.2, what we did, we listed those events where honorariums are covered, and that would include Canada Day, Remembrance Day, National Indigenous Peoples Day, Blackfalds Days, Culture Days, Volunteer Appreciation, Grand Opening, ribbon cutting, and municipal coordinated events and staff functions. And that's over and above the council meetings, standing committee meetings, public hearings, and municipal boards and committees, those normal attended functions. In per diems, we also cleaned or added some wording there, and which I hope provides some additional clarity. And per diem will be provided to members for council recognized conferences, conventions, education sessions, seminars, and workshops, and other recognized and budget approved activities. We realize that over the last number of years, a lot of conventions and conferences have been kind of renamed as seminars, workshops, and those sorts of things. And we hope that we've captured all of those. Also, council member, board, committee, and commission appointees for participation in external boards, committees, and commissions, as well as community organizational meetings. Those would be things like Chamber of Commerce and things like that. Per diem will be provided to council members for participation on ad hoc committees formed by resolution of council. Per diem will be provided to members of council for attendance at regional council meetings, with other municipal councils as well as meetings with regional school boards. Per diem will be provided to council members for attendance at budget meetings, municipal workshops, and retreats and open houses. Also, special council meetings, elected official orientation and training, and travel time for claimable per diems outside of the municipality. We've also added that per diems will be provided to council members in attendance and participation not included in subsections 3.2 to 3.5 through approval by council by formal resolution. That would be things that were identified or something kind of out of the ordinary where council wants consideration for per diem. Per diem rates will not be provided for participation in the Red Deer River Regional Water and Wastewater Commission because there's per diems paid by those commissions. Also, under Section 5, Health and Wellness Spending Account, we've changed that to reflect the annual amount provided. And also, we've made some changes in 8.1 to have the internet connection paid in installments in June and December of each year instead of at the end of the year. And those are the changes that brought forward, and I know there's a lot of information there. And, if council feels that the changes meet the expectations, we ask the council approve the amended appendice as part of council remuneration and compensation policy 15621.
Thank you. Questions or comments for CEO Thompson? Councilor Pell.
Thank you for that explanation. One thing I noticed that wasn't listed on there or specified, thank you, were events, and I think this is something that had come up that we were looking for clarification on, were events where we're invited to speak within the community, if those fall under section 2.3. Events that are outside of the community are a little different because then travel time and stuff applies, but for events where we're invited to speak within the community, I was curious whether those fall under 2.3 or in section 3.
I would say definitely so. The last two bullets, grand openings and ribbon cuttings and any municipal coordinated events and staff functions. These are events not planned by the municipality?
Yes, that was what I was thinking. And then I did have one more comment if anyone else did. Okay. So I'm not quite sure about the outside boards. So for as long as I've sat on council, and the years that I've sat on the Chamber of Commerce board, that's not something I've ever put in on. I've never put in time for that because I realize it's an outside board, but it's something within our community, same as like the school boards. It's something they're not necessarily looking for a council appointee. It's just a nice thing that we offer as a council to get out in the community more. So I can say that I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable with some of the boards on that list, with them being included in that list. I feel that some of those should be included just within our honorarium. So I don't know what everyone else's thoughts were on that, but I have to stop talking.
Deputy Minister.
I kind of have to agree with Councillor Pell, because I've never put in for any of these. I never put in for the ad hoc committees I sat in on the last term of council either, because they were right in our community and right at the town office. And I feel as a councillor, those are our duties. So if we decide that we want to take the time out of our schedule to sit on an ad hoc meeting, then we can. If it's taking time away from our job, I can see that maybe getting paid for it would be okay. But if we have free time, that's what we choose to do. I think as a council, that's why our people in our community have elected us to do these things, so.
So the only thing, with some of those meetings are during the day, and it's pointed out that the mayor's fault that some instances, council members would have to miss work and you may be penalized with the salary or wages because of that. So, definitely, I expected that we would have some discussion on these items if possible changes. I'm willing to look at some of those and bring back some amendments.
Cindy?
So when we have our organizational meeting, we're given the list of the outside committees and the time obligations. So typically we understand whether it's going to be daytime meetings or evening meetings. And all of council goes through that list and decides which ones they feel they can attend without interrupting their schedule too grievously. And I think that personally, if I put my hand up for a board that has daytime meetings, regardless of whether that takes away from school or work or other commitments, that was a choice that I made at that meeting. I tend to agree. I think that all of these are things that we have never paid per diems for before, and I don't see why we would start now. And then I also just had a question as well about, I was grateful to Councillor Appel for her comment, because that was a question that came up about events where we were asked to speak at. I feel that's something that's under our remuneration, so I'm happy to hear that you agree. I also wondered if we could have some clarity around volunteer appointments, because I know that sometimes council is asked to volunteer at things. For example, I volunteer regularly for our community. I have done the victim services. I can't remember what it's called. Their highway charity check stop. Thank you. And I would never put in for that, but it has come up with other council members before. So if we could just maybe have some clarity around what the definition of volunteering is, and that we do not pay per diems or travel for those things, that would be awesome as well.
So I do have a couple, one thing that I saw in here that is either an incomplete redundancy or we need to be more clear. In 3.7, it indicates that the regional water and wastewater commissions would not receive per diems. It says a little bit earlier in 2.4 that any board, commission, committee that receives a separate per diem or a separate payment would not qualify. So it's okay to have clarity, but I think if we're going to be clear, add clarity in 3.7, we should also include the Lacombe Foundation, because that's also one that receives a per diem. So either we take that up 3.7 out because it's already indicated in 2.4, or we add the Lacombe Foundation. And I do think that there is room for us to actually have more discussion on this. My thought is that perhaps we bring this up as an item at our next council workshop, that we can maybe break down some of these. I would agree, because some of the meetings that I go to, quite a lot of them in this last organizational meeting even, I took on because I have maybe a little more availability than some other council members, and I understood that historically those didn't receive any pay. Some of them are a little bit longer than others. Some of them are, maybe upwards of 2 or 3 hours during the day, and they're questionable. Even though I haven't typically claimed them, but some of them are really quick, half an hour, 45 minutes. So I think there's room for us to discuss this in more detail. And my suggestion is that maybe we make if someone's willing, if no one else is willing, I'd make a motion that we bring this back at the council workshop, because I think there's enough room for discussion before we move this forward, unless someone else disagrees that we need to have something in place now. Councilor Bill?
Thank you. I don't disagree with you because I do think it's part of a larger discussion, just in comparison. So the IDP and ICF committee compared to a school council meeting, the amount of thought and time and preparation required to attend those meetings and understand what's going on is significantly higher than just joining into an already established committee's meeting for a half hour, 45 minutes. So I think that's definitely part of a larger conversation that we could have.
Just sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Mayor Hoover as well with that. I just think that there's a lot of fine tuning to do when it comes to, spending tax dollars like this and for everybody to understand what we're charging for, what we're not, that type of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna agree with you.
I know it's difficult to lay out every possibility that comes before council. So, I do have a good understanding of some of the changes recommended tonight, and we'd be more than pleased to participate in the discussion on this. There's some other options that I've researched as well with other communities, and we could share that as well during this discussion.
So, Bill?
Thank you. Sorry, I did have one more comment that I missed before. The BH Park Blackfalds Health Practitioners Attraction and Retention Committee is listed as an outside board. Is that not an internal board? Because it's
Yes, it is.
managed by town staff, so okay. I thought that seemed out of sorts on this list.
So if there's no other comments, like I said, I would personally like to see just a recommendation to refer this back to administration to be brought up at a workshop. Just to have more thought, because there are definitely a few things in here that would probably warrant consideration for per diem. Some of them, maybe we have some discussion as to the individual's experiences, how much work is entailed in those meetings. So, I don't want to say that. I'm on 3 of the 4 student council boards, and they're drastically different between all 3 of those. Some of them much more work than others, so I wouldn't want to necessarily lump them all into the same category. So if someone's willing to entertain that motion, if not, I would make the motion just to refer this back to administration. Does someone else want to make it? Councilor Coulter?
I'd like to motion that we take the recommendations in regards to policy 156.21 and refer it back to our next workshop for more review.
Thank you. Questions about the motion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship Council.
Next item is the green capital purchases.
Thank you, Worship and Council. Before you have the green capital projects, at the November 22nd council meeting, the council directed administration to bring back some more information for your consideration. The MSP, the Municipal Sustainability Plan, did identify the environmental stewardship strategy, which is in Appendix A, as a council priority, and subsequently council adopted this strategy in 2021. One of the key focus areas of this plan is the town manager's energy use and increases the use of renewable energy. Goal number 2, which is on page 36, is to promote the reduction of energy use through the implementation of conservation strategies and incentives and policies. The key focus of this area was to move away from fossil fuels vehicles to electric, resulting in decreased greenhouse emissions. The green capital projects that we have listed below will help council achieve this goal. In order to secure the available grants and meet grant timelines, administration is seeking approval on these initiatives tonight. Grant applications are based on a first come, first served basis, with the remaining funds available Grant funding will only be secure once a formal agreement has been signed. The project number one, which is the bylaw enforcement vehicle, we did talk on that at the last council meeting. Extensive research into the suitability of this vehicle has been undertaken by bylaw, and this information was provided by other enforcement departments that already utilize EV vehicles. We did do a cost-benefit analysis of this electric vehicle opposed to a gas-powered vehicle, and that's in Appendix B. This was used by the calculators, and this was calculated by the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre EV Savings Calculator. So that the numbers there, I'll just run through them pretty quickly. The lifetime savings opposed to a gas vehicle is around $59,000. That's with a 12-year lifespan, using around 16,000 kilometres per year. If you look at the bottom figure there, I think it's just under $6,000. That's the price differential between the two vehicles over the lifetime of the 12-year lifetime span. So that vehicle there apparently tells you that we need to get the gas-powered vehicle for around $6,000 to make all things equal. So, so like I mentioned, the total lifetime savings is just under that $60,000. Back out the actual cost of the $65,000 gas-powered vehicle, and you can arrive at that number. So from a financial perspective, it does make sense to proceed with that vehicle. Project number two is the administration vehicle. Once again, trying to achieve the goal in the environmental stewardship plan. The cost-benefit analysis will yield lower total savings because the kilometres per driven per year by the admin vehicles is substantially less. However, working with the local dealership will enable us, the demand for these vehicles is extremely high, and working with the local dealership will help us secure those vehicles if council chooses to proceed that way. Project number three was the EVs charging stations. As mentioned at the previous council meeting, we did get notification that the grant applications have been accepted, but once again, the grant application has to be signed to secure those funds. At the March 22nd council meeting, council made these three motions. I won't read them there, they're in the memo there. Administration did some research on the one and only charging station in town behind the hardware store on Broadway. They didn't have many stats for me on the actual users and whatnot, because it is free to use and they don't monitor it out the back because it's out the back of the building as well. However, I searched, is there any advertising, is there any signs? But since they're associated with PV Mart, I think most PV Mart shoppers know that there's an EV charging station at most of the PV Marts throughout the province. If council was to move forward with the EV charging stations, Lacombe would update map request and all the signs within the town to identify these charging stations for people coming to the community and use. Under financial implications, the initial budget to replace the Ford Explorer with the outfitting was around that $90,000. With the grants and the trade and the marketing contribution from Lacombe Ford, both project 1 and 2 can be achieved for that initial budget of $90,000. Project 3, council did identify a level 3 charging station as well as a level 2. The municipal cost of both $43,000, nearly $44,000 for the level 3, and council did agree to a $15 an hour charging cost there, and level 2 around that $9,500 for the municipal portion there. So with that, there's 3 administrative recommendations here, and I will open it up for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Stendy.
So I noticed in project 2, there is a trade-in value, but there isn't for project 1. What would happen with the old vehicle?
Yeah, so good question. So the current vehicle is the Ford Taurus. There is a pickup truck at the Abbey Centre that they are using. So the Ford Taurus will go to the Abbey Centre, and that truck will get released into our fleet for another pickup.
Okay.
It's better suited for that.
Okay.
Any questions? Just with regards to the level 3 charging station, so with that $15 an hour rate, do we anticipate that there'll be any profit from that, or is that just basically expecting to be cost recovered?
Good question. At minimum, it would be cost recovery, I think, until we see the numbers and the actual, I didn't do the math on the amount of charge that a 20-minute or half an hour would actually cost us, but I assume that at minimum would break even. If not, there'll be a bit of profit there.
And is that something that ties us in with that grant application? Do we have to stipulate that, or do we have the ability to adjust that if we see the costs?
Yeah, so if it was to, let's go to a level 2 and keep costs down, the grant application, we have to amend the grant application, but as I said, it's not signed as yet, and there's still grant funding in the back available, so we could amend the different levels of charging if that's council's wish.
Yeah, no, that's not my question. Is it with the level 3, we've decided that we were going to charge $15 as the rate for charging. Can we adjust that rate if we find that the electrical rates?
Yeah, sorry to that. Yeah, definitely, it's up to us what we charge, and if we get through the first month, then we estimate that it's costing us $15, $16, $20 an hour to run that. Yeah, definitely we can come back to council or link up to administration to adjust that price.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Dennis.
So with charging the police vehicle, is it gonna be secured, that vehicle secured while it's charging?
Yeah, so good question. So in the operations facility, they do have a bay. There is already the wiring there, so overnight they'll be parked in the bay and it will charge overnight. Well, it'll be a level 2 charger that actually comes with the vehicle. So we already looked at the ability to charge indoors there. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? Councilor Pell?
Thank you. Is the $15 charge comparable to what surrounding areas are charging?
It would be cheaper. An average charge on a level 3 is maybe 20 minutes. So you're looking at $7.50 for half an hour. So that would be comparable, if not better.
I understand that the idea behind offering a level 2 and a level 3 is so that people stay in town longer. I just don't know that that's the best location for people to spend more time in our community. I realize that due to the power grid or whatever, it makes sense to put it there. And while it is central in the community, it just seems like it would make so much more sense to have it closer to a recreation facility or closer to a central park path or something where there's more for people to do than in that parking lot. I feel like the majority of people would, for me, so for example, if I was driving through town and I had to sit in a parking lot and wait for my vehicle to charge, then yeah, I would pay the money to get out faster, which kind of defeats the purpose. So if we're going to have the ability for people to pay so that they can charge quickly, then it would make sense to have 2 of the level 3s. I just don't see that the level 2 would get used there because even the location on Broadway, where there's one existing, makes more sense. There's more to do. And I realize they're not very far away, but for people that don't know the community, they're here from out of town and they're just parked along the secondary highway, I don't know that that's enticing enough for them to get out and learn more about Blackfalds.
Councilor Stanley?
I wholeheartedly agree. I also feel that if it was myself and there was a choice between spending to charge my vehicle or parking 2 blocks away and charging it for free, I would go with free. My question is do we anticipate this causing any issues with any of the business owners on the other side of the highway? Because we are essentially putting it in a parking lot, and that is the hope that people would get out and use those businesses, but we're not providing the same for the businesses across the highway. So do we anticipate that being a concern or an issue moving forward with any of the business owners on the other side of the highway?
So to answer that question, Councillor, it has to be on municipal property and have a power source municipally owned. So on the other side of the highway, it was pretty hard to get those two things to align. To speak for the business owners, I'm not too sure, but that is the decision that you're making now to proximity to other businesses may look favourable to them. However,
And then I have another question, but it's about the administration vehicle.
Yep.
So the mileage on that vehicle is exceptionally low. And I'm just curious if administration has had a look at the logs for that over the last year, even to see how much of that has been staff and how much of that has been council. Because I would be curious to see how much staff actually use the vehicle. Because looking at the project as is, to me, it doesn't seem feasible to even keep that vehicle. Like, looking at this as a resident, my personal opinion would be to trade in the vehicle and put that cost toward the new RCMP vehicle, especially if administration isn't utilizing that administration vehicle to its full potential. And it doesn't appear that it is being used much at all.
yeah, definitely I can speak to that question, and Laurie can add in and anything there. The summertime it is used. There is people, well, we do have summer students come in. Last year we had a GIS asset management summer student that was always in it every day, driving around. Not many kilometres, but they needed the ability to go out and having a vehicle. The problem with having summer students use their own vehicles, they are, on a lower income and whatnot, and we like to provide that vehicle there. Secondly, we're trying to encourage more staff to use it during the day. We do have, on IT here, zipping to building. It's more convenient for them to jump in their own car. However, we're trying to direct them to the admin vehicle and get away from them using it personally.
Okay, so the reason I ask is because we did have in the budget, a budget line for a couple of used light trucks that we were told were for exactly that. They were for the summer students.
Correct.
Because we were finding issues with that. So if we're purchasing those vehicles already, I'm struggling to see the need for the administration vehicle.
Those two trucks, we did do a survey on the Public Works as well as the Parks needs. Public Works came back with 4 trucks. And I think, no, that was Parks, and then Public Works was like 2. So there's a need for 6 trucks to effectively get people around, around town. However, we hopefully secure those 2 trucks there, but it hasn't. The need's still there. Like, even if we get rid of the admin vehicle, the need's still going to be there.
Yeah, the student that he was talking about is a JS student working out of this building. The trucks are used for the field crews, and as council's aware, we do employ quite a few students in the summer, and transportation is always an issue. So having these older vehicles that are safe, that get utilized for half a year type thing, is by far preferable than purchasing new. The other thing with the MIN vehicle, we have seen a reduced use over the last 2 years because of COVID. Definitely, that has impacted the utilization. But as the director mentioned, we do try and have staff utilize the vehicle as effectively as we can. We have had an internal procedure that the vehicle not go out overnight. From time to time, there is some exceptions, but that's something else that can be looked at. If it is just one night versus having the vehicle gone for 3 days. So there is opportunities to have increased utilization as well.
And I can weigh in on that. I know that in the first term for the council members that are in the second term now, I think there was a hesitancy. I think there was a misunderstanding that vehicle was available and what the purpose was. I don't think it was used very frequently. I have started using it a little more frequently, I think probably in the last 6 months, maybe half a dozen times. And I'm probably the exception where I've had some meetings or events to go to on a weekend or something where I needed to take it overnight. And the cost savings were significant compared to me using my personal vehicle. I think if some of the things I've done, like for example, going to Drumheller, the claim for me to do mileage would have been $130, $140 for me to use my own vehicle. And instead of that, it's $50 worth of gas to use the vehicle. And I think if we're using an EV vehicle, that's even more cost effective. And I will say in terms of the usage, having, being in the office more often, I see that vehicle quite often out and then coming back when I'm coming in. So I do think that town staff are using it, but it seems like they are using it for short trips that run over the community center or Ivy Center. And so whereas that vehicle might not have high mileage, it's getting frequent use just for short distances. So it seems like it's has a purpose, and it's the only vehicle I think that's dedicated to the Civic Center. So a lot of the staff that need to do running, it would be more cost effective, I think, in the long run than us paying mileage. And I think that's a discussion to have in terms of mileage, because I know the government of Alberta has increased the mileage rate, and we're going to have to, with gas prices, probably address that. So those costs are even more with mileage claims. I do like the idea that we can gain a little bit in terms of trade-in value. If it's low mileage right now, then it's going to retain a little more value. And certainly that sponsorship, I like that creativity. We do that with buildings. If we can gain an advantage by having a sponsorship, I personally like that. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. That was going to be my comment. I like the sponsorship aspect of that project. I also think if the town were to have an electric vehicle, that would be something great for us to utilize when we visit other communities for things like parades. Because again, we do not have a parade float budget line, which is fine. I'm not complaining. However, if we could use a vehicle that's reliable to attend those sort of events where councillors don't have to be worried about hauling trailers and extra equipment, this could look pretty slick. So I think that's a two birds situation.
And Councillor Dennis.
And if we use the bylaw, it'd have the nice colored lights and everything.
Can we switch those
It
to
could be
red?
like a really win-win situation.
Can we get approved to be able to drive it?
Now, weighing in on that, I think, Councillor Coulter, I'll let you go first if you have a question. Was your hand up or?
Yeah. I'm sorry, my question is aside from the vehicles, so
Sure.
it's more on the charging system. Because I know we've had an extensive 2 or 3 times in regards to where the charging system's possibility of going. And we had, I know that the suggestion had come up to check out by the Centennial Park and putting one there. Was that any further discussion and gone with that, or?
Yeah, my apologies. I kind of picked up this charging project halfway through when I was talking to the grant people about the EV vehicles, and the previous EDO kind of handed it off there. But I'm not aware that the power source was.
I wasn't aware that was the location myself.
Yeah.
We talked about that when this first came up in regards to the grant, because we talked about, I think it was Councillor Pell that had brought up the park over by the Central Park
I know we have talked about
And-
Tutty Pond Park
and Teddy Pond
and
Pond
the parking lot over here.
Mhm.
We talked about the waiting center, and I think we talked about the Builders Center, possibly maybe the community hall parking lot.
Yeah, and like, I was just a little bit shocked because I hadn't heard about the down at Blackfalds Motor Inn as being a possible location.
I think mainly because of the power supply.
Mhm.
So for the grant application, do we have to have a specific location for the grant application?
I do not think, it's listed in the current grant application. However, I think if we went back and say we want to move location, I think that would be fair.
So we could, if council is just wanting to move ahead with this, we could get the recommendation and we could apply for the grant and bring back and solidify the locations at the next meeting.
Yeah, because there was a pile of different locations, because we were talking over at the Wadey Center as well.
Well,
Right.
there's pros and cons to each location too, when you look at it, to me, One of the better locations would be the parking lot over here. It's central to
Mhm.
downtown. But I don't know if there's a power supply close enough that it would be maybe cost prohibitive. So, we, as mentioned, the director just didn't get involved here recently and with the grant applications and things like that. So we can explore them more and bring it back.
Yeah, I just know that we were talking about Central Park just because it was on the other side, right? Giving option to more businesses over there.
Yeah, so we can definitely look at different locations, and the problem there would be estimating getting the power source. The quotes that we've listed here is for those specific areas and the meters of cable that we need and what power sources are there. So at a minimum, there's 46% of the project cost will be grant eligible. Depending on what power we need, those costs could go up and down depending on what locations. But I'm sure we can put a table together with the suggestions and estimate, or council could direct us with an upset limit, and we can go from there.
I think this is just the start of charging stations. There'll be more in the future. And so I think the opportunity to provide those in a large area, spread out, will be an opportunity in the future. But this is just kind of the start of the program.
Deputy Municipal.
Okay, I'm jumping back to the Ford Explorer. Do you need to know anything about the Ford Explorer tonight for a grant application, or can that be tabled until January? Because I'm still not comfortable buying a new vehicle when there's 17,000 kilometers on the old one.
Sorry, so the project number 2, the admin vehicle.
Yes.
As I mentioned, I was chatting with the commercial vehicle sales guy today. The vehicles that are grant eligible, and they're called the select model, there's 25% more orders than they can manufacture next year. They will put orders through, and the owner is involved to get fleet government orders. However, the pool of cars that are available, they're trying to get our orders on top, being through that government. However, if we do delay it, I'm not sure that we will get application next year.
And then my next question is about these charging stations, because the one is going possibly motor in. With the new economic development officer, is there a way for us maybe next year to go out and communicate with the businesses and see if they're interested in maybe having a charging station, and maybe we can help fund some sources for them to have it once these electric vehicles become more popular in our community? Right now, they're not popular, but in the next 5 years, they may be popular, and I think it would be great to see what our businesses want, because we need to help them to attract more opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. We can explore that. And I mentioned in the memo here that Project 3, the EV charging stations, won't be tied to Project 1 and 2. However, we fall back to the problem that to get the grant eligible charging stations, they have to be on municipal property. So definitely, if council wanted to allocate some grants out to businesses to get those charging on there, that's a different process there.
Well, for me, on both of these initiatives, I understand that a lot of this is trying to meet the needs of something that's going to happen later on. In terms of the vehicles, I don't feel that, maybe it's a perception issue with replacing a vehicle that has low kilometers, but I think that administration is confident that the overall savings are there. In fact, I think this is probably beneficial over the long run in terms of the cost to the community. So I completely support those decisions. These are capital planned expenditures anyways, and I think that this is a creative way for us to save money for the community in the long run, despite maybe it seeming like it's unnecessary with a low kilometer vehicle. In terms of the EV stations, it's like the chicken before the egg, or however you want to look at it. I know that there are electric vehicles in the Blackfalds. A lot of my walks, I'm stepping over people's extension cords. They're charging their vehicles in front of their homes. So there are definitely those vehicles out there, and there will be more and more. And I think it's our responsibility to actually have some of this infrastructure. I would hope that the next step would be that maybe our development standards will require any new commercial development to have them. I noticed that the school, St. Great, for example, has a level 2 charging station. They're relatively common in newer facilities. So, I mean, I would be fairly confident that they'll probably have 1 or 2 of those level 2 charging stations at the high school as part of the planning for the future. I think that it's just inevitable that we're going to have those, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on collection for recycling that we are certain that is not actually going towards recycling and not benefiting us, but the expectation from the community is that we do that. So I think in terms of providing ED, it's kind of in that line. You know, we have to spend some money to support the expectation of very few people right now, knowing that in the next few years it's going to be more and more. So I do support that. But I guess I get it. The perception is that we're maybe spending more when it's not a huge demand. But I do support the economics when it comes to this. And I think that if we set an example, we can then expect the businesses and whatnot to align with us. And we can set those expectations with our development standards in the future. So I am in support of these. The vehicles for sure, because I think the economics are positive for us in the long run. The EV stations, I think, is because it's necessary. But I appreciate the comments that were made by the other council members, and the administration has indicated that we will look at these locations more closely, because I don't think there's a perfect place that we can do this. And if we have the option to move these in the future or rethink where we put them, I'm happy to support that as well. So that said, I guess if I'm understanding correctly, we're going to make a motion that is allowing some flexibility in terms of where they're located. Right?
Sorry, on the third recommendation, yeah, we can, you want to bring back more information?
We can for
Yeah.
the charging station.
Yeah, we'll bring back the list that we've heard tonight and in the previous council meetings. We can probably analyze whether level 2 or 3 can go there based on locations, and then we'll bring back that in January. I think the grant application has to be in by March of 2023.
So then we're looking at still 3 motions, the third one being that we're referring that one back to administration. Okay, so we do have 3 motions. Someone, Deputy Mayor Schwab.
I'll move that council moves to accept the recommendation of administration to purchase the Ford Mach-E for the replacement of the enforcement vehicle.
Thank you. Debate or discussion on that motion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The second motion. Councilor Stenny?
I'm prepared to make the motion, but I will be voting opposed. I will move the council accept the recommendation of administration to purchase the Mach-E for the replacement of the administrative vehicle.
Thank you. Debate or discussion on that motion as perfectly acceptable to make a motion and not support it. We need to move this forward. No debate. So I call the motion. All in favor? All opposed? And that is defeated. And the third motion would be referring the EV stations back to administration.
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Dennis? Any debate or discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Moving on, 7.5, the 2023 operating budget.
Thank you, Worship and Council. Before you do have the 2023 operating budget, at the last council meeting, we did do the budget changes from the budget workshop. And we have updated the consumer price index as of October 2022. 2022 is around 6.8%, and that's having the pressures on municipal operations. As mentioned at the last council meeting, we do have a table there highlighting the impact of these inflationary pressures, over 10% of the tax increase alone. The fixed cost of RCMP contract, electricity and natural gas increased over 5.8% alone. Council and administration has worked through the operating budget to reduce the overall tax increase down to 4.76%. Over the last 4 years, we do have an average increase calculated about 1.34%, with that 4.76% this year. At the last council meeting at November 22nd, we did hear from the Blackfalds Area Historic Society. That budget is attached in Appendix D for comments. Comparable communities have been listed in the table as well. Tax rate increases anywhere from 3.73 up to a proposed 10% for certain cities and towns throughout our comparables. And our neighbour to the south, the city of Red Deer, did pass at 4.61%. The 3-year financial plan has been prepared for you as well. It's Appendix C that highlights the expected revenues and expenditures over this period. So under revenues, we are estimating a 3% increase for both 2024 and 2025 as well. There are some drops in revenue in 2025 for cost sharing of adventure being paid off in protective services, and any increase in culture services, which in 2025, due to the full amount of interest and principal payments for the adventures of the library. All other expenses are remaining stable. The proposed tax increase at 4.76% would equate to $11.53 per month increase to an average house valued at $350,000. The administration recommendations tonight is the council move to accept the recommendation of administration to approve the 2023 operating budget in the amount of $31,320,764. The second motion there is just the council accepts the 23 to 25 financial plans information. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Director DeRosa? Councilor Bell?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. This is regarding the Historical Society budget, since we didn't actually discuss it when we received it at the beginning of November. So while our other town departments saw significant cuts over the past 3.5 years, in order to balance our budgets and do what we had to do, our grant to this particular group or society has not changed. Even though they've shown a significant decrease in their actuals, which we only have last year's, we don't have the other years. So, sorry, not only was there a significant decrease in their actuals, but obviously all of their programming significantly decreased as well, as did everyone else over COVID. So while I'm a little sad that we didn't get this information the past years, like we didn't actually get the budgets, we need to seriously talk about a reduction in this, because based on last year's actuals, if you price that out over 3 years, it's something like $54,000 surplus based on what the town is providing. So I don't know how we're not decreasing this to either by $10,000 or down to $10,000. But I welcome council's input, because like I said, we haven't had a chance to discuss this yet.
Councilor Cindy?
So I had almost identical thoughts. Personally, I think that dropping it down to $10,000 to match the county of Lacombe's contribution would be fair.
Discussion? Questions? Councilor Bell?
Thank you.
And then just back to the tax percentage. Again, thank you with us receiving the actual, the rate of the most recent CPI, I'm sorry. Somebody just stop me if I'm no longer speaking English, okay? With having our CPI number, now that we know that it's 6.8, we can really appreciate the fact that the town has been able to keep us down to 4.76, especially when our policing costs are already at 3.81% of that. So thank you again.
Okay, any other questions? So you have two motions in front of us, recommendations for motions. Councillor Stendy?
So if I was to move the first recommendation, but if council was amenable to reducing the Historical Society, that 7,000 and whatever it is, 7,060, I don't have it in front of me at this moment, down to the 10,000. Knowing that this number would change, is it acceptable for administration to just approve the operating budget as amended?
Correct.
Perfect, wonderful, moved.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Thank you. Next one is accepting the financial plan as information councillor sends.
I'll move the council accepts the 2023 to 2025 financial plan as information.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous as well. Thank you. Thank you. There is no action correspondence. Starting with information items 9.1, 2023 list of Blackfalds community events.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Every year we provide a list of community events for both yourselves and for the community to know. So we listed about 20 events there. Well, I guess the Summer Culture Series is 8 events alone, but we do have some changes that we're just made aware of this week from our volunteer programmer. April 20th, the Volunteer Appreciation event will actually be April 19th. The Youth Recognition event will be on May 3rd instead of May 4th. And those 2 events were changed to accommodate seniors program and senior centered programming, so we don't disrupt their card night. And then the Community Info Expo was changed to September 13th. So that's all within the last few days here. So, and as I mentioned, we are still working with event organizers for concerts and other events like professional bull riding and potentially a youth event as well. So we still have yet to hear about the HHL showcase, but we should hear about that soon. And then we were talking earlier in the budget meeting about having an additional expo, Community Info Expo night. So we've so far settled on April 3rd for that event, if that's something that council still wants to do. So other than that, that's all the information there on our community events for this year.
Councillor Dennis?
I just have a question on the family Easter event.
Yes.
What does that involve?
Well, geez, the last time I went to one, it was at the community hall. There was the Easter bunny, and they had some crafts, and then they went outside for an Easter egg kind of scavenger hunt. So
It's during the day?
it's on a Saturday usually.
Yeah, but it's during the day?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Because Cody's Memorial Games
That-
scheduled April 1st for that evening.
Yeah, it would be before that for sure.
Okay, no, great, thanks.
Deputy Mayor Swap.
The last Easter event I attended, they didn't go outside. Everything was held inside the community hall. I don't know if they changed that because of COVID
Yeah.
or
I'm
just
sure.
to keep things closer.
Potentially, yeah.
But it was a great event either way. It's good.
Deputy Councillor Stendy?
So just one question. I noticed here it says breakfast and lunch with Santa. Are we going back to breakfast and lunch? Or is it going to be snacks with Santa again?
I was told breakfast and lunch, but
Okay.
yeah, we'll see, I guess, which way we go. But that date is for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions for Clerk Bowish? That's up. Okay. 9.2, letter from Minister Ellis. So my question on this, I know we did have a presentation from our victim services, our regional committee. Do you see a benefit to sending this letter and getting some feedback from them? I think they have a better idea about how this change impacts the victim services in our particular region.
Definitely we could do that, to get some more information, get some clarity, that would be fine.
Yeah, I would appreciate understanding how they feel that this impacts victim services. I know they had some concerns, and the reason why that we sent a letter to the minister. 9.3, Enforcement and Protective Services Monthly Report for November. Councilor Pell.
Thank you. I did actually have a question, but I see that our enforcement manager had to leave. So I'll ask it now, and I'll ask it again tomorrow night at the police and committee meeting. I was just wondering if we have any sort of reporting system in place, or like a list of measurable KPIs that we have for our SRO. I know that we talk a lot about bullying and issues of vandalism in our community, and I'd be interested to know if this program is helping that. I'm just interested to know if there's any reporting programs or systems in place.
Yeah, we don't have that information readily at hand.
Yep, that's fine. I didn't expect it to.
Councilor Pell, but I can definitely find out and we can provide that at a later date, and then feel free to request that information tomorrow.
Absolutely, thank you.
I would add further to that, the Youth Action Coalition includes our SRO. That's a big topic because we also have the schools involved, so having some solid stats.
Council hasn't been informed or invited to participate in that board in any way, so therefore I think that would be good information
For sure.
for us to have.
No, and that board itself is still kind of being formed. I mean, there's been a few meetings, and each meeting there's like a broader inclusion in that. So I'm fairly certain that if anyone on council wants to participate in that, they would be more than welcome to. I think the next step in January with that would be then to actually have some youth representation on there as well. So I don't think there's any reason why anyone on council couldn't take part in that. Councilor Stanley?
So is this a committee where potentially we should be discussing an actual appointed council representative?
We can do that. We can bring that to the next meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, 9.4, Development and Building Monthly Report for November. Nine 9.5, Bolt Monthly Report for November. Deputy Mayor Swab.
I just wanted to note that it's great to see that the ridership is going up, especially when the cost of gas is still peaking. It's low now, but it's supposed to go up after Christmas. I think more people are going to start using the public transportation, so I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers increase.
Thank you. 9.6, Lacombe Foundation meeting minutes for September 26th.
Thank you. Just one question, and I guess it would be directed to you since you sit on that board. They talk about a affordable housing needs assessment guidebook. I'm just wondering if we'd be able to get a copy of that.
I can ask. I don't know that I've necessarily even been provided that guidebook. I think
They only
may.
mentioned it at that last meeting,
Right.
and it said it was shared for information. It hasn't been loaded to their website yet, but if we could be able to take a look at it.
Yeah, I
Because
can
I
look
think
into it.
that's, would be helpful to our community.
Yeah, and that was one of my questions, to get more information about the affordable housing and how they determine eligibility for that, both in Blackfalds and in Lacombe. And I did find that the information was a little bit complex, a little bit difficult to understand. They weigh a whole bunch of different factors. It's not just income level for the family, it's kind of a needs assessment. So I can bring back. Councilor Stendy?
So a little off topic, but when I saw this, it reminded me that I intended to remind council that if you are unable to attend a meeting, that you, as soon as possible, let your alternate know that you will not be able to attend. I'm not saying that's what happened here by any means. Just when I saw it, that was the immediate thought that I had, was just as a reminder to all of council. Just because I've noticed in the past little while with sickness and stuff going around, there has been several different members who have missed meetings for different things. So just a reminder for all of us to contact your alternate.
I was just gonna do something similar to what Councillor Stendy said, so we're good.
And then I guess to add to that, the Lacombe Foundation did meet earlier this month. And so when we see the minutes come up from that, there'll be further information that will be provided about the affordable housing. Because as I said, I raised that question, and they did provide more information about it than they did at the September meeting. 9.7 NPC meeting for October 25th. 9.8 rec board meeting for November 2nd. Councilor Bell?
Just one question through the chair. The suggested photos for the signboards at Border Paving Plaza, those will be coming forward to council for final approval?
Yeah.
Correct, okay.
9.9 County of Lacombe highlights for November 24th. Nine point 10 City of Lacombe highlights for November 28th. And 9.11 City of Lacombe highlights for December 5th. There's no questions. Can I get a motion to accept information items as information? Councilor Coulter?
I will accept, or motion to accept information items as information.
Thank you. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. There's no roundtable discussion. We do have minutes from the regular council meeting, November 22nd. Any errors or omissions noted? Any questions about those minutes? Motion to accept those minutes as provided. Councilor Sands,
So moved.
all in favor? That's unanimous. There are no notices of motion. Business for the good of council. There are some Christmas cards that have been received from the city of Lacombe that are in the reading trade. If anyone's interested in having a look. And with that, we do have one confidential item. So if you'd like to go into a recess prior to going into in camera, Deputy Mayor Saab.
I'll motion a 5-minute recess.
All in favor? That is unanimous. Back in at 39 or 8:40.